944 P-51 Mustang should demonstrate at extreme altitude. The impossibly smooth power delivery showed slight variations. The perfect control responses developed minor inconsistencies that suggested normal mechanical limitations were reasserting themselves. The unknown pilot seemed aware of the changing conditions. The instruction took on new intensity, as if crucial lessons needed to be conveyed before time ran out. The maneuvers became simpler but more profound, basic techniques executed with such perfection that they revealed principles most pilots never fully understood. "She's running out of time," Chen whispered over the radio, her voice carrying unexpected emotion. The observation felt accurate in ways that transcended technical analysis. Something was ending, not just the encounter, but a connection to aviation history that might never be repeated. The Mustang pilot began what appeared to be a farewell sequence, performing maneuvers that were simultaneously demonstration and tribute. Each movement honored different aspects of military aviation: the courage of test pilots who pushed boundaries, the sacrifice of combat aviators who died in service, the dedication of instructors who passed knowledge to new generations. Lieutenant Colonel Kellerman found himself deeply moved by the aerial performance. Throughout his career, he had witnessed countless displays of flying skill, but nothing had approached the emotional impact of watching this mysterious aviator honor the entire legacy of military aviation through pure flight artistry. "Command, Viper 1. Unknown pilot appears to be concluding the encounter. Request permission to attempt final identification protocols." "Viper 1, Command. You are cleared for any reasonable identification attempts. Document everything possible before contact is lost." Kellerman made a decision that felt both professional and deeply personal. He guided his F-22 closer to the Mustang than safety protocols normally allowed, close enough to observe details that might provide definitive answers about their mysterious instructor. Through his canopy, he could clearly see the vintage fighter's cockpit. The pilot wore authentic World War II flight gear: leather jacket, cloth helmet, oxygen mask connected to primitive life support equipment. But most remarkably, the figure in the pilot's seat appeared to be a woman of perhaps 30 years, with dark hair visible beneath the cloth helmet and determined eyes that met his gaze directly. "Command, Viper 1. Visual confirmation of pilot identity. Female, approximately 30 years of age, wearing authentic World War II flight gear. Pilot is aware of close observation and appears to be attempting direct communication." The mysterious aviator raised one gloved hand and pointed first at Kellerman's aircraft, then at her own heart, then skyward toward the vast expanse of atmosphere above them. The gesture was simple but carried profound meaning, something about connection between pilots, love of flight, and the eternal nature of the bond between those who danced with death among the clouds. Captain Morrison's voice carried awe and uncertainty in equal measure. "Viper 1, are we really looking at Alina Volkov, someone who should have died 75 years ago?" Before Kellerman could respond, the unknown pilot began her final lesson, a sequence of maneuvers that told the complete story of her aviation career through the universal language of flight itself. The movements honored her aerobatic championship, her service with the Night Witches, her dangerous ferry missions across Siberian wilderness, and finally, her disappearance into legend above these same waters decades earlier. Each maneuver was executed with such perfection that it transcended mere technical demonstration and became something approaching spiritual experience. The vintage fighter carved through thin air with grace that seemed to bend the laws of physics, guided by hands that had learned their craft when aviation itself was young, and every flight was an adventure into unknown territory. As the farewell performance continued, the electromagnetic anomalies surrounding the aircraft began fluctuating more dramatically. Morrison's instruments showed power signatures building toward some kind of crescendo, as if the mysterious forces sustaining the impossible encounter were gathering for one final display. The sky itself seemed to respond to the building energy, with unusual light phenomena beginning to manifest around the Mustang. Aurora-like displays danced across the aircraft's surfaces despite the absence of normal atmospheric conditions that created such effects. Every pilot in the formation watched in fascination as their mysterious instructor prepared for whatever transformation awaited at the conclusion of the most extraordinary aviation encounter in military history. The final sequence began as the Mustang climbed toward 50,000 feet, higher than any World War II fighter had ever operated under normal circumstances. The vintage aircraft's engine maintained full power, despite atmospheric conditions that should have starved any piston power plant of the oxygen needed for combustion. As the mysterious pilot reached apex altitude, she began the most complex aerobatic sequence any of the F-22 pilots had ever witnessed. The Mustang traced intricate three-dimensional patterns that seemed to write messages across the sky, loops, rolls, and spirals that combined into an aerial symphony, celebrating the eternal romance between humans and flight. "My God," Henderson whispered, "she's signing her name in the sky." The observation was metaphorically accurate. Each maneuver contributed to an overall pattern that, when viewed as complete sequence, resembled cursive script written across miles of atmosphere. The signature took nearly 10 minutes to complete, with every movement contributing to letters that spelled out a message only pilots could fully appreciate. When the aerial signature was complete, the mysterious aviator performed one final maneuver, a perfect victory roll that seemed to encompass all the joy, skill, and passion that had defined her extraordinary aviation career. At the apex of the roll, with the Mustang inverted against the backdrop of infinite sky, something remarkable occurred. The aircraft began to glow with soft, golden light that seemed to emanate from within its aluminum structure. The illumination wasn't harsh or mechanical. It carried the warm quality of sunset reflected on polished metal, beautiful and somehow peaceful. "Jesus Christ," Morrison breathed. "The whole aircraft is lighting up like it's powered by something beyond our understanding." The glow intensified as the Mustang completed its victory roll and leveled off, now flying straight and level toward the setting sun. The unknown pilot raised her hand in a final salute to the F-22 formation, a gesture that carried all the respect and camaraderie that existed between pilots who understood the sacred nature of their calling. Captain Chen's voice carried tears that were audible even through the radio distortion. "She's saying goodbye. After 75 years, Alina Volkov is finally going home." The golden glow surrounding the aircraft reached peak intensity, transforming the vintage fighter into something that seemed more energy than matter. Yet the Mustang maintained its distinctive silhouette and continued flying with the same precision that had characterized the entire encounter. Lieutenant Colonel Kellerman made one final attempt at direct communication. "Unknown pilot, this is Lieutenant Colonel Kellerman, United States Air Force. If you can hear this transmission, know that your lessons will not be forgotten. You have honored every pilot who ever reached for the sky." The response came not through radio, but through the aircraft itself. The glowing Mustang performed one last gentle roll, an acknowledgement that transcended the need for words. Then the mysterious pilot pointed toward the horizon where sun met sea, banking her impossible aircraft toward the golden light that awaited beyond the edge of the world. "Command, Viper 1. Unknown aircraft departing on heading 270, maintaining supernatural luminosity. We are not pursuing." "Copy, Viper 1. Let her go." The words carried weight that extended far beyond tactical considerations. 6 modern warriors watched as aviation legend took wing one final time, carrying with her secrets and stories that belonged to an age when flight itself was miracle enough to sustain the human spirit through humanity's darkest hours. As the glowing Mustang disappeared into the sunset, the electromagnetic anomalies that had surrounded the encounter gradually faded. Morrison's instruments returned to normal readings, the aurora effects dissipated, and the thin atmosphere above the Pacific resumed its usual electromagnetic silence. But something had changed permanently in each pilot who witnessed the impossible encounter. They had touched history, learned from a master, and participated in a moment that transcended the normal boundaries between past and present, between legend and reality, between the living and the eternal. The flight back to base passed in contemplative silence, with each pilot processing an experience that would influence their understanding of aviation for the remainder of their careers. They had been chosen, by fate, by chance, or by something beyond human understanding, to receive instruction from one of history's greatest aviators. In their individual flight logs, each pilot would record the encounter as a routine patrol with unusual weather phenomena. The official reports would mention electromagnetic anomalies and unexplained radar contacts that disappeared before positive identification could be achieved. But in their hearts and memories, they would carry the truth about the afternoon when Alina Volkov returned from legend to remind modern aviators about the eternal magic of human flight. As the F-22 formation descended through layers of atmosphere toward their home base, Captain Chen broke radio silence with a transmission that spoke for every pilot present. Falcon Lead, requesting permission to add a formal commendation to the permanent record. Today we flew with the best instructor any of us will ever have. Copy Phoenix, commendation approved. Some lessons are worth preserving for future generations. The recommendation would begin a quiet process that would eventually result in Alina Volkov's name being added to the Aviation Hall of Fame, 75 years after her official disappearance. The ceremony would be private, attended only by those who understood that some stories were too important to be forgotten, even when they challenged conventional understanding of what was possible. But that formal recognition lay in the future. For now, 6 pilots carried the memory of an extraordinary encounter back to Earth, where they would spend the rest of their careers trying to live up to the example set by a mysterious aviator who had reminded them that skill, courage, and dedication could transcend even death itself. The Pacific sunset painted their aircraft in shades of gold and crimson as they flew toward home, forever changed by an afternoon when the impossible had taken wing and taught them lessons about aviation that no training manual could ever contain. In the vast silence of high altitude, where sky met space and human dreams touched the infinite, they had witnessed the eternal truth that some bonds, like those between pilots and the endless sky, could never be broken by time, distance, or the boundaries between worlds. Behind them, the empty sky held no trace of the mysterious encounter save for the memories carried in 6 hearts that would never forget the day they flew with legend itself. The Pacific stretched endlessly toward horizons where sunset met forever, keeping its secrets as it had for millennia, while somewhere beyond the edge of visibility, a golden light continued its eternal journey toward whatever realm awaited those who had earned their wings through courage, skill, and an unbreakable love of flight. The debriefing session took place in a secure conference room at Elmendorf Air Force Base, with participants including the 6 pilots, Base Commander Colonel Patricia, Iron Eagle, Rodriguez, and a classified number of intelligence analysts whose presence suggested the encounter had attracted attention from the highest levels of military leadership. Lieutenant Colonel Kellerman presented the primary account, describing events in precise chronological order while carefully maintaining the professional tone expected in official briefings. Yet even his measured delivery couldn't diminish the extraordinary nature of what they had experienced 45,000 feet above the Pacific. The unknown pilot demonstrated flight capabilities that exceeded performance parameters for any known aircraft of that configuration, Kellerman reported. Maneuvers were executed with precision, suggesting exceptional training and experience. The pilot appeared to be conducting instruction rather than reconnaissance or hostile activities. Colonel Rodriguez had commanded fighter squadrons for 15 years and had heard every possible variation of unusual encounter reports. But the consistency between 6 independent accounts, combined with sensor data that defied rational explanation, suggested something far beyond routine military encounter protocols. Colonel Kellerman, your report indicates the unknown pilot integrated seamlessly into your formation and demonstrated knowledge of modern flight procedures. How do you explain an apparently vintage aircraft displaying such advanced tactical awareness? Ma'am, based on historical research provided by Captain Chen, we believe the pilot was Elena Volkov, a Soviet aviator who disappeared in this area during World War II. The demonstration of pre-war aerobatic sequences, combined with visual identification of period-appropriate equipment and flight gear, supports this conclusion. The room fell silent as analysts processed the implications. Elena Volkov represented more than just historical curiosity. She was a legend among aviators, someone whose skills and achievements had become part of aviation folklore. The suggestion that she might have somehow returned to provide instruction to modern pilots challenged every assumption about the nature of reality itself. Captain Chen provided historical context that lent credibility to their identification. Ma'am, Elena Volkov was documented as one of the most skilled pilots of her generation. Her aerobatic achievements, combat record with the Night Witches, and ferry mission experience made her uniquely qualified for the instruction we received. The maneuvers we witnessed matched documented descriptions of her signature techniques. Colonel Rodriguez studied the sensor data that accompanied the pilot's verbal reports. Electromagnetic readings, thermal imaging, and radar tracks painted a picture that was both technically impossible and thoroughly documented. Captain Chen, assuming your identification is correct, how do you explain the aircraft's performance characteristics? Ma'am, I can only report what we observed. The aircraft demonstrated capabilities that exceeded known specifications for any P-51 variant ever produced. Whether those capabilities resulted from modifications, unknown technology, or other factors, is beyond my expertise to determine. The careful phrasing reflected the challenge every participant faced in discussing an encounter that transcended conventional explanation. Military personnel were trained to deal with enemy aircraft, equipment failures, and weather emergencies. None of their training addressed the possibility of receiving flight instruction from historical figures who had been dead for 75 years. Morrison presented the technical analysis of electromagnetic anomalies recorded throughout the encounter. Ma'am, the power signatures we detected were consistent with advanced propulsion systems, but the specific characteristics don't match any known technology. The readings suggested the aircraft was generating its own electromagnetic field far beyond anything a conventional piston engine could produce. Captain Morrison, are you suggesting the aircraft was powered by unknown technology? Ma'am, I'm reporting what our instruments recorded. The power signatures were real and measurable, but their source remains unexplained by conventional analysis. The intelligence analysts had remained silent throughout the pilot's presentations, taking extensive notes while asking no questions. Their presence suggested that the encounter had implications extending far beyond routine military aviation incidents. Finally, Colonel Rodriguez addressed the question that dominated everyone's thoughts, but that nobody had directly articulated. Based on your collective assessment, do you believe you encountered Elena Volkov? The 6 pilots exchanged glances that carried the weight of shared experience. They had discussed this question extensively during the flight back to base, and their conclusion was unanimous despite its impossibility. Lieutenant Colonel Kellerman spoke for the group. Ma'am, based on aircraft identification, pilot capabilities, historical knowledge, and demonstration of techniques that belonged specifically to Alina Volkov's documented skill set, we believe that identification is accurate. Even though Alina Volkov has been presumed dead for 75 years. Yes, ma'am, the evidence supports that conclusion despite its unusual implications. Colonel Rodriguez closed the briefing files and looked directly at each pilot present. This encounter will be classified at the highest levels. Official records will reflect unusual weather phenomena and unexplained electromagnetic activity. You are not to discuss these events with anyone lacking appropriate security clearance. The classification order was expected, but it carried personal weight for pilots who had experienced something that transcended normal military encounters. They had been privileged to receive instruction from aviation legend, but that privilege came with the burden of keeping the truth confined to classified channels. As the briefing concluded, Captain Chen made one final request. Ma'am, requesting permission to research Alina Volkov's complete service record. If we encountered her today, there might be historical information that could help us understand why. Permission granted, Captain Chen. Coordinate with our intelligence analysts to ensure your research remains within classification parameters. The formal debriefing ended, but the real processing of their extraordinary encounter was just beginning. 6 pilots would spend the remainder of their careers integrating lessons learned from a mysterious instructor whose identity challenged everything they thought they knew about the boundaries between life, death, and the eternal bonds that connected all aviators across time itself. That evening, as Pacific stars emerged in the clear skies above Alaska, each pilot privately reflected on an encounter that had forever changed their understanding of what it meant to fly. They had touched history, learned from a master, and been reminded that some truths transcended the limitations of rational explanation. In the Officers' Club, conversations avoided direct mention of the day's events, but every pilot present shared an unspoken awareness that they had participated in something extraordinary. The respect and camaraderie that characterized military aviation had been deepened through contact with someone who embodied the highest traditions of their profession. Captain Chen spent the evening researching Alina Volkov's service record, discovering details that made their encounter even more remarkable. Volkov's documented achievements suggested a pilot whose skills approached the supernatural even by the standards of her era. Her disappearance over the Bering Sea had robbed aviation history of one of its brightest stars, but somehow, impossibly, that star had returned to shine one more time. As midnight approached and the Alaskan night settled over Elmendorf Air Force Base, 6 pilots carried extraordinary memories into sleep that would forever be touched by dreams of golden light, perfect flight, and the eternal romance between human souls and the infinite sky that called to them from beyond the edge of every horizon. The encounter had ended, but its influence would ripple through military aviation for generations, as those who had learned from Alina Volkov passed her lessons to new pilots who would carry forward the traditions of excellence, courage, and dedication that defined the finest aviators in human history. Captain Chen's research into Alina Volkov's service record revealed details that provided disturbing context for their encounter. Working through classified Soviet archives that had been released decades after the Cold War's end, she discovered that Volkov's final ferry mission had been far more significant than routine aircraft delivery. According to declassified documents, Captain Volkov had been transporting experimental modifications to American-built P-51s, enhancements developed through joint Soviet-American cooperation that included advanced navigation systems, extended fuel capacity, and engine modifications that significantly improved high-altitude performance. Her aircraft had been one of only 12 P-51s modified with this experimental equipment. More intriguingly, Volkov's mission profile suggested she had been testing these modifications under extreme conditions, pushing both aircraft and pilot beyond normal operational parameters. The ferry route across the Bering Sea had been chosen specifically because it required sustained flight at altitudes and ranges that would prove whether the experimental systems could operate reliably under combat conditions. The modifications explain some of what we witnessed, Chen reported to the investigation team. Alina Volkov was essentially flying an experimental fighter disguised as a standard P-51. The performance characteristics we observed might have been within the capabilities of her modified aircraft. But the explanation raised new questions about the encounter's electromagnetic anomalies and the aircraft's apparently supernatural endurance at extreme altitude. Even the most advanced 1944 modifications couldn't account for performance that seemed to violate basic laws of physics. Lieutenant Colonel Kellerman reviewed Chen's research while processing his own memories of the encounter. The mysterious pilot's demonstration of modern tactical knowledge suggested access to information that postdated her historical service by decades. Either Alina Volkov had somehow continued learning throughout the 75 years since her disappearance, or the encounter involved factors beyond conventional understanding. Captain Chen, did your research reveal anything about Volkov's personal motivations or psychological profile? Yes, sir. According to her squadron mates, Volkov was obsessed with advancing aviation knowledge. She believed that flight techniques and safety procedures should be shared internationally, regardless of political boundaries. Her instructional abilities were legendary. Other pilots sought her training because she could identify and correct flying deficiencies that other instructors missed. The information aligned perfectly with their experience during the encounter. The mysterious pilot had demonstrated exactly the kind of patient, progressive instruction that characterized exceptional flight instructors. Her apparent desire to share knowledge with modern pilots reflected the same educational philosophy that had made her legendary among her contemporaries. Morrison's continued analysis of sensor data revealed additional anomalies that suggested the encounter's significance extended beyond simple historical curiosity. Sir, I've been studying the electromagnetic signatures we recorded, and I'm finding patterns that seem almost like communication protocols. Explain, Captain. The power fluctuations weren't random. They followed specific sequences that repeat at regular intervals. It's like the aircraft itself was transmitting data through electromagnetic pulses, similar to how modern aircraft communicate with ground control through transponder signals. The possibility that their mysterious instructor had been attempting technological communication, alongside the aerial instruction, added new dimensions to the encounter's significance. If Alina Volkov had somehow acquired advanced knowledge during her 75-year absence, she might have been trying to share more than just flight techniques. Morrison, can you decode any specific information from the electromagnetic patterns? Sir, I'm working with our signals intelligence specialists to analyze the data. Some sequences appear to contain mathematical formulas, possibly related to advanced aerodynamic calculations or propulsion theory. The investigation was revealing that their encounter had been more complex and potentially more important than initially understood. Alina Volkov might have returned not just to provide flight instruction, but to share technological knowledge that could advance modern aviation development. Colonel Rodriguez convened a classified meeting with the Pentagon's most senior aviation development specialists to review the growing body of evidence suggesting their encounter had involved technology transfer as well as pilot training. The implications for national security and scientific advancement were significant enough to warrant attention from the highest levels of military leadership. Gentlemen, we're dealing with a situation that challenges conventional understanding of both historical events and technological possibilities, Rodriguez briefed the assembled experts. Our pilots received instruction from someone who demonstrated knowledge spanning 75 years of aviation development, accompanied by technical data that might represent breakthrough advances in propulsion and aerodynamic theory. The Pentagon specialists included theoretical physicists, advanced propulsion engineers, and historians who specialized in classified military technology development. Their preliminary assessment suggested that the encounter might have involved technology that remained beyond current scientific understanding. Colonel Rodriguez, assuming the electromagnetic data represents legitimate technical information, we're looking at propulsion theories that are decades ahead of current research, reported Dr. Sarah Kim, the Pentagon's leading specialist in exotic propulsion systems. Some of the mathematical relationships we're seeing in the data match theoretical frameworks that we've been developing for next-generation aircraft design. The revelation suggested that Alina Volkov's mysterious return had been motivated by more than nostalgic instruction. She might have been specifically attempting to accelerate human aviation development by sharing knowledge acquired through means that remained beyond conventional explanation. As the investigation continued, one question dominated all analysis. If Alina Volkov had somehow survived her 1944 disappearance and continued developing aviation knowledge for 75 years, where had she been? And why had she chosen this moment to make contact with modern pilots? The answer to those questions would prove to be even more extraordinary than the encounter itself, revealing connections between aviation history and human destiny that extended far beyond anything the military investigators had imagined possible. Dr. Kim's analysis of the electromagnetic data proved to be the breakthrough that transformed understanding of the encounter from mysterious incident to potential scientific revolution. Working with the Pentagon's most advanced signal processing equipment, she and her team decoded information that suggested Alina Volkov had been attempting to share technological advances that could revolutionize human aviation. Colonel Rodriguez, the data contains detailed specifications for propulsion systems that operate on principles we're just beginning to understand. Dr. Kim reported during a classified briefing attended by representatives from multiple government agencies. The theoretical framework suggests methods for achieving sustained flight at extreme altitudes using energy sources that don't appear to require conventional fuel. The implications were staggering. If the electromagnetic transmissions from their mysterious instructor contained legitimate technical specifications, they represented scientific breakthroughs that could advance human aviation capabilities by decades or centuries. Lieutenant Colonel Kellerman and his team were recalled to provide additional detail about their observations during the encounter. Their descriptions of the Mustang's impossible performance characteristics now took on new significance as potential validation of revolutionary propulsion technology. Sir, throughout the encounter, the aircraft demonstrated capabilities that seemed to violate known laws of physics, Kellerman reported. But if Dr. Kim's analysis is correct, those capabilities might represent applied technology based on scientific principles we're only now beginning to discover. Captain Chen's historical research had revealed additional information about Alina Volkov's background that provided context for her apparent technological knowledge. Sir, according to newly declassified Soviet documents, Volkov worked closely with captured German scientists after the war ended. She had access to experimental research that included theoretical work on exotic propulsion systems and advanced aerodynamic concepts. The revelation suggested that Alina Volkov might have been exposed to scientific knowledge that remained classified or undeveloped when she disappeared in 1944. If she had somehow survived and continued researching those concepts for 75 years, she could have achieved technological breakthroughs that current science was only beginning to approach. Captain Chen, did your research reveal anything about the specific German scientists Volkov worked with? Yes, sir. Documents indicate she collaborated with Dr. Hermann Oberth and Dr. Ernst Stuhlinger, both of whom later became crucial figures in American rocket development. But there are references to other scientists whose identities remain classified, possibly because their research involved technologies that were never officially developed. The connection to advanced German research added credibility to the possibility that Alina Volkov had possessed knowledge of propulsion principles that remained beyond mainstream scientific understanding. Combined with 75 years of theoretical development, such knowledge could explain the apparently supernatural performance characteristics witnessed during the encounter. Morrison's technical analysis supported the revolutionary propulsion theory. Sir, the power signatures we recorded match theoretical predictions for propulsion systems that manipulate electromagnetic fields to achieve lift and thrust. Current research suggests such systems might be possible, but we're decades away from practical application. Unless someone has been developing the technology in secret for the past 75 years, Dr. Kim added. The data we've decoded suggests not just theoretical understanding, but practical experience with field manipulation propulsion. Whoever transmitted this information has built and operated aircraft using these principles. The investigation had evolved from unexplained encounter to potential intelligence breakthrough, with implications for national security and scientific advancement. Alina Volkov's mysterious return appeared to have been motivated by a desire to share revolutionary technology that could transform human aviation capabilities. But questions remained about her motivations for choosing this specific time and method for making contact. The electromagnetic transmissions suggested urgency, as if she believed the information needed to be shared immediately rather than developed through normal research channels. Dr. Kim, is there anything in the data that suggests why this technology is being shared now? Colonel Rodriguez, some of the mathematical relationships include temporal calculations that I don't fully understand. But there are indications that the electromagnetic fields required for this propulsion technology are becoming more accessible due to changes in Earth's magnetic environment. The observation suggested that Alina Volkov's return might have been timed to coincide with natural conditions that would make her advanced technology more feasible for practical development. Climate change, solar activity, or other environmental factors might have created opportunities for breakthrough advances that hadn't existed previously. As the investigation continued, military leadership faced a crucial decision about how to proceed with information that could revolutionize both military and civilian aviation. The technology described in Alina Volkov's electromagnetic transmissions represented potential advantages that could determine the outcome of future conflicts or open new frontiers for human exploration. But pursuing development of the technology would require acknowledgement that the information had been provided by someone who had officially been dead for 75 years, raising questions about the source's reliability and the possibility of deception or misinformation. The decision about how to proceed would ultimately rest with the highest levels of government, but the pilots who had participated in the extraordinary encounter knew that their afternoon above the Pacific had changed the course of human aviation history in ways that would influence technology development for generations to come. The Pentagon's decision to pursue development of Alina Volkov's propulsion technology initiated the most classified aircraft development program in American military history. Codenamed Project Nighthawk, in honor of their mysterious instructor's call sign, the program brought together the nation's most brilliant aerospace engineers and theoretical physicists to decode and implement the revolutionary concepts contained within the electromagnetic transmissions. Dr. Kim led the technical development team, while Lieutenant Colonel Kellerman and his pilots served as consultants, providing detailed descriptions of the impossible flight characteristics they had witnessed. Their first-hand observations became crucial reference points for engineers attempting to understand how theoretical principles translated into practical aviation applications. The aircraft demonstrated perfect control at altitudes where conventional engines couldn't maintain power, Kellerman reported during one of countless technical briefings. But there was no evidence of jet or rocket propulsion. The Mustang maintained its original external configuration while achieving performance that exceeded modern fighters. The engineers faced the challenge of translating electromagnetic field manipulation theory into working propulsion systems that could be integrated into conventional aircraft designs. Alina Volkov's data provided the theoretical framework, but practical implementation required solving thousands of technical problems that she apparently had resolved through decades of secret development. Captain Chen continued her historical research, searching for clues about Alina Volkov's activities during the 75 years since her official disappearance. Newly declassified documents from multiple nations revealed hints of unexplained aviation incidents that might have involved her continued presence in the world of flight. "Sir, I've identified at least 12 incidents since 1945 involving unidentified aircraft with performance characteristics similar to what we observed," Chen reported. Sightings span multiple continents but show consistent patterns. Vintage World War II fighters operating at impossible altitudes with apparent electromagnetic anomalies. The pattern suggested that Alina Volkov had been conducting test flights and refinement of her propulsion technology for decades, perfecting the systems that she eventually demonstrated during their encounter. Each incident might have represented a step in her development process, building toward the moment when she felt ready to share her discoveries with modern aviation. Morrison's analysis of the electromagnetic data had revealed additional information that provided insight into Alina Volkov's motivations for making contact. "Sir, the transmissions include what appear to be environmental monitoring data, atmospheric conditions, solar radiation levels, magnetic field variations. It's like she's been tracking changes that would affect propulsion system performance." The environmental monitoring suggested that Alina Volkov's timing for making contact had been carefully calculated. Changes in Earth's electromagnetic environment might have created conditions that made her propulsion technology more practical for widespread development and deployment. Morrison, do the environmental readings suggest specific advantages for current development efforts? Yes, sir. Solar radiation patterns and magnetic field variations over the past decade have created conditions that would make electromagnetic field manipulation more efficient. It's like she waited until the natural environment would support easier implementation of her technology. The revelation explained why Alina Volkov had chosen 2025 for making contact rather than earlier decades when her technology might have been more difficult to develop and deploy. Her apparent patience in waiting for optimal conditions demonstrated the kind of long-term strategic thinking that characterized exceptional military planners. As Project Nighthawk progressed through its initial development phases, test pilots began experiencing phenomena that validated Alina Volkov's theoretical framework. Prototype systems generated electromagnetic fields that produced measurable thrust and lift effects, confirming that the principles contained in her transmissions were scientifically sound. The first test flights took place at Area 51, where security protocols could protect the revolutionary technology from unauthorized observation. Test pilots reported control sensations that matched descriptions provided by Kellerman's team, suggesting that they were successfully replicating the flight experience that Alina Volkov had perfected decades earlier. "The aircraft responds to pilot inputs with precision that exceeds anything I've experienced in conventional fighters," reported Colonel Jennifer Falcon Martinez, Project Nighthawk's senior test pilot. "Energy management is completely different. The aircraft maintains power and control at altitudes where normal engines would fail. The successful test flights proved that Alina Volkov's technology could be adapted to modern aircraft, but they also raised new questions about her current whereabouts and continued activities. If she had been developing this technology for 75 years, she might possess additional advances that remained undisclosed. The possibility that Alina Volkov might make additional contact with military aviation led to the establishment of monitoring protocols at bases worldwide. Radio operators maintained watch on frequencies that might carry her transmissions, while radar systems were calibrated to detect the electromagnetic signatures associated with her propulsion technology. The search for Alina Volkov had become as important as the development of her technology, because contact with humanity's most advanced aviation pioneer could accelerate breakthrough discoveries that would determine the future of human flight among the stars themselves. 6 months after the initial encounter, radar stations across the Pacific began detecting intermittent contacts that matched the electromagnetic signatures associated with Alina Volkov's propulsion technology. The contacts appeared sporadically, never remaining in one location long enough for intercept attempts, but their patterns suggested systematic observation of Project Nighthawk's development progress. Captain Chen had been promoted to major and assigned as Project Nighthawk's liaison for historical research and potential contact protocols. Her analysis of the radar contacts revealed patterns that suggested Alina Volkov was monitoring their technology development while maintaining careful distance from direct interaction. "Sir, the contact patterns indicate surveillance of our test facilities, but also visits to locations associated with aviation history," Chen reported to Colonel Rodriguez. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Edwards Air Force Base, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, like she's visiting places that honor aviation pioneers. The observation suggested that Alina Volkov's activities extended beyond simple technology monitoring. She might be conducting her own form of historical pilgrimage, visiting sites that commemorated the aviation community to which she had devoted her life. Dr. Kim's team had achieved breakthrough progress in electromagnetic field manipulation, successfully testing propulsion systems that replicated many of the capabilities witnessed during the original encounter. But their development was proceeding cautiously, following conventional engineering protocols that emphasized safety and reliability over rapid advancement. Colonel Rodriguez, our development timeline projects operational prototype systems within 18 months, Dr. Kim reported. But based on the electromagnetic patterns we're detecting from Alina Volkov's aircraft, she's achieved integration levels that we won't reach for several years. The assessment suggested that Alina Volkov remained decades ahead of official development efforts, possessing technological capabilities that could provide significant military advantages if she chose to share additional information. Her apparent surveillance of their progress might indicate evaluation of whether they were ready for more advanced instruction. Lieutenant Colonel Kellerman had been assigned to lead the contact protocol team, responsible for preparing communication methods that could facilitate additional interaction with Alina Volkov. His experience during the original encounter made him uniquely qualified to understand her probable expectations and motivations. "Sir, based on our encounter, Alina Volkov responds to demonstration of competence and respect for aviation traditions," Kellerman assessed. "She's more likely to make contact if we can demonstrate that we're worthy of advanced instruction." The evaluation led to a decision to conduct public demonstration flights using early prototype systems, showcasing American aviation capabilities while sending subtle signals that might attract Alina Volkov's attention. The demonstrations would serve multiple purposes: testing technology, building public confidence, and potentially encouraging their mysterious instructor to provide additional guidance. The demonstration flights took place during the annual Edwards Air Force Base Air Show, where test pilots flew prototype aircraft equipped with Elena Volkov's electromagnetic propulsion principles. The public saw impressive but explainable flight performances, while hidden sensors monitored for electromagnetic signatures that might indicate her presence. During the third demonstration flight, radar operators detected the familiar electromagnetic anomaly approaching from the northwest. A single aircraft with World War II configuration was climbing toward the demonstration altitude, its propulsion signature matching previous encounters with Elena Volkov. Control, Nighthawk 1. Contact bearing 320, range 20 nautical miles. Electromagnetic signature confirms probable identity as Elena Volkov. Nighthawk 1, Control. You are cleared to attempt contact. All demonstration aircraft maintain current altitude and prepare for possible formation integration. Kellerman guided his prototype aircraft toward the approaching contact, his heart racing with anticipation of renewed contact with the mysterious instructor who had revolutionized his understanding of flight. The familiar silhouette of a P-51 Mustang emerged through the desert heat shimmer, piloted by the same figure in vintage flight gear who had provided extraordinary instruction above the Pacific. As the aircraft closed to visual range, Elena Volkov raised her hand in the same greeting that had characterized their original encounter. But this time, her gesture included pointing toward the ground, an invitation to land and conduct face-to-face communication that had been impossible during their high-altitude encounter. The invitation represented a crucial escalation in contact protocols, offering opportunities for direct information exchange that could accelerate technology development by years or decades. Elena Volkov was apparently ready to move beyond demonstration and instruction toward active collaboration with modern aviation development. The decision to accept her invitation would prove to be the most important choice in aviation history, since the Wright brothers first took flight, opening doors to technological advances that would carry humanity beyond Earth's atmosphere toward destinations that remained unimaginable to those who had never learned to dance among the stars. Elena Volkov's P-51 Mustang touched down on Edwards Air Force Base's main runway with the same impossible grace that had characterized her flight performance.